Welcome back to Weekend Prime. I am Robinson Okenye. Now, tonight on First the Facts, we take a hard look at leadership accountability and the uncomfortable truth behind Kenya's governance. Our reporter, Herman Kamariki, questions whether Kenya is truly on the path of becoming a Singapore in Africa or whether that promise remains political rhetoric. Here is Herman Kamariki with First the Facts.
Now, welcome to First the Facts. When leaders talk about Kenya becoming like Singapore, it sounds inspiring. We all want to get there. It's a possibility. Now, Singapore is orderly, disciplined, efficient, and treats corruption not as political inconvenience, but as a crime that demands punishment. Let's listen to our president.
This country called Kenya, we are going to do the things that those countries did. They were with us as third world countries. Today, they are first world countries.
But tonight, we must face an uncomfortable truth. Kenya is nowhere near Singapore, not because we lack potential, but because we refuse to confront what holds us back. Singapore did not become Singapore by speeches. It became Singapore by making painful decisions early and sticking to them, no matter who was affected. Let me give you some statistics here. In 2024, Singapore jailed a former cabinet minister on corruption-related charges. He was part of the system, powerful, connected. Yet once public trust was broken, office was lost and prison followed. Can that happen in Kenya? In the widely known City Harvest Church scandal, senior church leaders were jailed for misusing tens of millions of church dollars. This was religion, this was influence, this was money, and still the law took its course. But in Kenya, we even, wash our roads for them and give them escort, even if they lie to us. Now, compare that with Kenya's record. Kenya has endured scandal after scandal. For example, NYS, where some of the people who were mentioned in the NYS scandal still became leaders. And of course, they're governing billions of this country's money.
Massive wastage of government funds. What message are we sending to the public?
There's another one, by the way. Afya House, Galana Kulalo, Triton Oil, Anglo Leasing, and many other. Cases drag through the courts for years, files collapse, witnesses disappear, and increasingly prosecutors or the prosecution withdraw cases of those implicated, and they walk free. Singapore is run by professionals who understand their fields. Kenya, too often, is run by political loyalists who are learning on the job. It's only in Kenya where highly technical ministries are led by people whose strongest qualification is political usefulness, or they campaign for someone. For example, education, health, finance, infrastructure, and these others are not ceremonial offices. They require training, experience, and expertise. You look at our cabinet and you can see all of them, or majority, if not all, they were politicians who are loyalists to some people in government. That is not what happens in Singapore. That is not meritocracy. That is political recycling. Singapore appoints experts. Kenya appoints allies and hopes policy will fix itself. It does not. And then there is the issue of accountability within the security sector. One of the most painful reminders came with the death of a young man, Albert Ojwang, who died while in police custody. The death sparked nationwide outrage. Investigations followed. Charges were eventually approved against junior officers and civilians. But for a long time, the senior officer whose name had been mentioned remained in office.
We should not cover or allow any individual to go unpunished.
Lazima tujue who is behind the murder of Albert Ojwang.
The public was told he has stepped aside. Later, it became clear that was not entirely the truth. And as Kenyans often do, we argued, we protested, and then we are moving on. Now, in Kenya, accountability often stops at the lowest ranks, while those at the top wait out the storm. Kenya does not lack intelligence, talent, or ambitions to get to Singapore, Mr. President. What it lacks is consistency in enforcing consequences and our laws. You cannot become Singapore while recycling leaders linked to failure. You cannot become Singapore while appointing loyalty over competence. You cannot become Singapore while prosecutors withdraw high cases and those implicated return through government appointments. That's funny. And you certainly cannot become Singapore by quoting Singapore. Singapore jailed its corrupt to protect its future. Kenya protects its corrupt and mortgages its future. And that is not cynicism, that is the fact. My name is Haman Kamariki. Let's meet in Singapore if this is addressed.
Haman Kamariki will face the facts. Let's get to